Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
A historic meeting of world leaders here in San Diego. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, President Joe Biden returned to our county for the second time in 5 months. This time, the prime ministers of Australia and the United Kingdom joined him for talks at Naval Base Point Loma. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says it was all about global security on the high seas.
That's right, Maya. The president arrived at Naval Air Station, North Island, and then came here to Point Loma, where he met with the prime ministers of both the UK as well as Australia. And this is actually a submarine base, as you can see behind me. The announcement they made is that Australia is going to be purchasing next-generation nuclear-powered submarines from the U.S. in order to modernize its fleet. It comes amid growing concerns about China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Biden's trip included discussions with the prime ministers about an 18-month-old nuclear partnership known as AUKUS. It's a security pact between the three countries.
We're powered, not nuclear armed. Australia is a proud non-nuclear weapon state and is committed to stay that way. These boats will not have any nuclear weapons of any kind on them.
Biden will also participate in bilateral meetings with the prime ministers to coordinate strategy on a range of global challenges, including Russia's war in Ukraine and the economy. Monday's rare public joint address by the three world leaders highlights a critical military alliance between the countries.
Nuclear propulsion is a highly complicated technology that requires years of training to master. So we're starting right away. Beginning this year, Australian personnel will embed with U.S. and U.K. crews on boats and at bases in our schools and our shipyards. We'll also begin to increase our port visits to Australia.
This evening, Biden will attend a Democratic National Committee reception in Rancho Santa Fe. San Diego is the first of 3 locations on a trip for Biden. Next up, he'll head to Monterey Park, where earlier a gunman killed 11 individuals this year. There he'll talk about gun prevention efforts. Afterwards, he'll head to Las Vegas and talk about lowering prescription drug costs. Here in Point Loma, Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
8 people died when 2 migrant smuggling boats capsized near Black's Beach in La Jolla. KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis says the tragedy comes as President Joe Biden faces increasing fire for his immigration policies.
Federal records show that smuggling attempts by sea along the San Diego coast more than tripled between fiscal years 2019 and 2023. Pedro Rios is an immigrant advocate with American Friends Service Committee. He says the deaths over the weekend at Black's Beach fit a disturbing pattern.
These maritime events are not a new phenomenon. They have been taking place now for probably over a decade here along the San Diego coastline. However, the trend has been picking up.
Rios went on to say that this is the direct result of a prevention through deterrence policy that dates back to the mid-90s. The goal is to make crossing the border so difficult and dangerous that it will deter would-be migrants from trying.
But that hasn't worked. And in fact, what that has led to, as we've been speaking, is an increase of people that have died as a result of that.
The Mexican Consulate General's office said it believes 7 of the 8 people who died last weekend were Mexican nationals. The tragedy happened one day before President Joe Biden visited San Diego to discuss a new security pact with Australia and the United Kingdom. Rios was disappointed that Biden is not focusing on border issues during this visit.
I don't get the sense that border and immigration issues are a priority for President Biden.
Biden faces more pressure than ever to address the border crisis. Conservatives say he's not doing enough to secure the border, while liberals are saying that he's broken campaign promises to roll back Trump-era policies. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
Another week of extreme weather is expected, this time impacting the country coast to coast. Many areas of Northern California are still flooded from heavy rains last week, and a breach in a critical levee has crews working fast to fix it. Mike Valerio has the latest.
Crews in Barrio, California are racing against the clock to place a temporary fix on a compromised part of a critical levee ahead of the 11th atmospheric river to hit the west this winter. It's expected to bring more intense, sustained flooding in the days ahead.
This is such a great hardship on this community, but we know that we will get through this.
The levee breach sending this rushing river into homes, farms, and trapping families in the small community of Barrio.
We really didn't expect it to happen, but here we are now. More
than 17 million people remain under flood watches across California and Nevada.
We are dealing with rain and wind events that I can only describe as a super soaker saturation event.
Across the country, a late winter nor'easter is threatening heavy snowfall and strong winds across New York and New England and raising concerns of coastal flooding, according to the National Weather Service, which will likely mean power outages.
We're ready for the storm. We've talked to our customers. Customer and our employees' safety is certainly our priority.
In Barrio, California, I'm Mike Valerio.
We've already had above average rainfall for this time of year, and now that El Nino is likely on the way, we could see even more coming up. What scientists are saying about the weather patterns and when more rain is in the forecast. On the heels of one bank collapse and a bank shutdown, President Biden sought to reassure Americans and the markets that the country's banking system is safe. Karen Kafer reports on the steps taken to protect customer deposits and try to contain a potential crisis.
President Joe Biden trying to instill confidence in the American banking system after Silicon Valley Bank collapsed and Signature Bank was shut down by regulators, both within days of each other.
Americans can have confidence that the banking system is safe.
Biden said customers of the failed banks would have access to their money Monday. The funds coming from the Federal Deposit Insurance Fund, which banks pay into, and not from taxpayers. Biden also said investors took a knowing risk in the failed banks and would not be protected, and the bank's leaders fired. Silicon Valley Bank was little known to most Americans outside of the startup world before depositors hastily withdrew $42 billion last Thursday in a classic bank run amid anxiety about SVB's financial health. The Biden administration's plan was relief to customers like Stefan Kalb.
It's odd to think about it now, but just even a week ago, Silicon Valley Bank was the gold standard. We are expecting Silicon Valley Bank to be around.
On Sunday, New York state regulators seized Signature Bank, a big lender to the cryptocurrency industry. Fears of other regional banks on the brink are raising eyebrows about how they're regulated, with less stringent rules than those put in place for the major financial institutions after the 2008 financial crisis.
The problem is, because of those regulations, a lot of the business they were doing has migrated to the less regulated parts of the financial sector, which are now pretty big.
Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission said Monday it's on high alert for any misconduct amid the recent banking turmoil. In Washington, Karen Kafer, KPBS News.
A vending machine in the South Bay is stocked with naloxone, making the life-saving drug easier to get. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman has more on how it works and why advocates say expanding access is key to preventing deaths.
It's been up for about a week, and over the last couple of days we've seen a lot of use and also a lot of just members of the public just coming by to see it.
This vending machine at the McAllister Institute in Chula Vista has one goal: preventing opioid overdose deaths. It dispenses 2 nasal doses of naloxone, commonly known by the brand name Narcan.
Naloxone is an opioid antagonist or an opioid blocker, so it goes to those receptors in the brain, blocking the opioid, allowing you to breathe. Most of the public knows how to do CPR, Heimlich maneuver, other life-saving things. This is another one. It's just another life-saving tool.
The machine is free and it's easy to use, so the first time you're going to use it, you'll have to scan this QR code, watch a short video on how to administer Narcan, you'll get a unique PIN code, and then immediately you'll get access to life-saving overdose medication.
Our efforts really are around saving lives. And so, the work that we do is about ensuring that people have an opportunity to access treatment and get better. They can't do that if they die of an overdose.
Stephanie Lau is San Diego County's Harm Reduction Program Coordinator. She says the county's goal is to have 12 of these Narcan vending machines set up throughout the region by the end of June.
This is really just about increasing access and for the foreseeable future, we want to ensure that that accessibility is available.
This is the nasal, so this would just go up in your nose, like this.
Not everyone has easy access to naloxone. That's where Tara Stamos-Busig and her team come in.
The sample read about 85% methamphetamine and about 15% water.
She runs the Harm Reduction Coalition of San Diego, which provides mobile services.
We have seen an increased need for naloxone and harm reduction services across the United States for a long time, and San Diego is no different.
She says to save lives, it's important to make naloxone more accessible and free of charge.
If it is a barrier issue, let's get rid of that barrier. And each community may have different barriers, so that's why it's important to go in and talk to the communities and find out from them what are the barriers for you. Transportation, knowing where to get it.
Their group works to meet people where they are, whether that's on the streets, in their homes, or even at large events like festivals and concerts.
Overdose does not discriminate. It doesn't matter how old you are, how much money you have, whether you're housed or not, what race or ethnicity.
Naloxone vending machines are just one part of the county's efforts to expand access. Officials say anyone can use them. The medicine only reverses opioid overdoses and is generally safe. However, it's not a substitute for medical treatment or getting help for addiction. If there's an opioid emergency, people should call 911. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
A near record low unemployment rate, a strong job market, and consumer spending sounds like good news. So why does it make economists and the Federal Reserve nervous? Gloria Pazmino went searching for answers.
As the U.S. unemployment level has hovered around record lows, ticking up to 3.6% for February, it's been causing inflation to skyrocket.
The tighter the job market, the stronger the pressure on employers to boost wages and lift their own production costs.
And causing the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise interest rates to try and tamp it down. Gary Burtless, a senior fellow in economic studies at the Brookings Institution, says over the past few months, there has only been around one unemployed worker for every 2 jobs available, intensifying inflation more rapidly than we are used to.
That is why the good news about unemployment and new increases in the number of people who are employed will result in pressure on the Fed to slow down the economy and reduce price pressures, wage pressures that tend to be contributing to inflation in the economy.
So when will the Fed be happy and take their foot off the brake? Burtless says the sweet spot is around 5% unemployment and 2% inflation. Gloria Pazmino, KPBS News.
People learn language from their elders, and the same is true of honeybees. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge takes a close look at a communicative dance done by bees.
Biologists who study bees have known for a while that forager bees can find food in the wild and tell others in the hive where it is. The language they use is a dance called a waggle, performed here by a bee with the red dot. Whatever it's called, it conveys to other bees the direction and the distance to the food.
This is the most sophisticated example of animal communication that we know of, because the bees are actually telling each other where to go to find resources.
In its dance, the bee points her head in the direction of the food. The length of time she waggles her abdomen indicates how far away it is. All forager bees are female. UC San Diego biology professor James Nye wanted to find out whether this remarkable behavior, this language, was instinctual or learned. So he created an experimental colony where young bees were isolated from older ones.
In the experimental colonies, because of how this works, they could never observe other bees waggle dancing. And that's because everybody was the same age.
Those isolated juvenile bees would later make a lot of mistakes in their waggle dancing. In fact, they never really learned how to communicate the distance to the food. Nye says this shows that the bees' communicative behavior is not only instinctual, it has to be learned. The use of the language allows them to quickly adapt to the different environments they have to live in.
Passing that information to the next generation of foragers and dancers could be helpful and a much faster way to adapt to different situations than having it genetically encoded.
He says transmitting useful behaviors genetically through evolution would take an awful lot longer, even in the case of honeybees who only live for about 40 days. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
California is getting a blast of rain from another atmospheric river, and climate watchers say that odds of a stormy winter next year are rising. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has details. And
wet weather is back in the mix as we venture our way to Tuesday, along with that continued cool with regards to temperatures, but it will be turning more tranquil as we work our way down the road later on this week. For tonight, we'll be dropping down into the 50s. Again, some clouds around, but for now, the impacts and the rain is off to the north. And we're going to be following, again, temperatures that'll be dropping down into the low 50s around Chula Vista, Oceanside down to 50, Borrego Springs into the 50s, and Mount Laguna dropping down to 43. Here's a look at Futurecast, and you'll see the precipitation begin to inch its way south as we work our way toward late night, but really not until we work our way toward the midday and especially the afternoon hours will we start to see the wet weather on the increase in our area. The snow levels will be way up there, above 8,500, even 9,000 feet initially. Coming down, though, to right around 7,000 feet as we venture our way into Wednesday. What does that mean? A lot of rain coming in. And again, the majority of those impacts on Tuesday will be off to our north, and we'll start to see that wet weather beginning to arrive as we work our way throughout the afternoon and into the evening. Heaviest of rain off toward the north. Again, looking at the potential here for some delays as we work our way toward the evening and the overnight as we top off at 63 in San Diego, Oceanside 62, Borrego Springs into the 70s, Mount Laguna at 48. We'll start to see the precipitation pressing its way through the area as we work our way into Wednesday. Again, lowering snow levels, and we can see again over an inch of rain. San Diego, some spots could be closer to 1.5 inches, even closer to 2 inches as we talk about areas north and also into the foothills. Rain tapers off later on Wednesday, followed by some cool air Thursday into Friday, but the sunshine will be back with us. We talk about the interior valleys. Morning downpours Wednesday, still cool in the 50s. Sunshine returns by Thursday, and we'll stick around into the start of the weekend. More so toward the mountainous terrain, as I mentioned, snow levels dropping to right around 7,000 feet, 6,500 feet on Wednesday, and cold Thursday into Friday despite the sunshine. Lows dropping into the 20s for a time and into the desert. And notice we're going to be talking about temperatures staying put into the 70s, but there will be some wind component here as we venture our way into Wednesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic.
The water over the western Pacific is starting to warm after 3 years of cooler than average conditions. Researchers say that ocean measurements are signaling an El Niño condition, which raises the possibility of rough weather next winter. But weather patterns are complicated, and an El Niño only tips the odds in one direction.
The jet stream, the area of fast-moving winds about 30 to 40,000 feet in the air, which kind of serves as like a storm highway, kind of gets directed more often across the southern tier of the United States, which leads to there being more storms and then more rainfall.
A strong El Niño in the winter of 1997 and 98 brought storms that pummeled California and caused $500 million in damages. But the weather systems don't always follow the playbook. A La Niña condition, cooler than average ocean temperatures in the Pacific, has been in place for 3 years. That typically brings drier weather to Southern California, but not this year.
Every El Niño is different, just like every La Niña is different. And we certainly have had pretty dismal El Niño winters precipitation-wise in California. So we can't exclude that possibility.
Climate watchers say El Niños and La Niñas are regular and predictable climate events, but the impact on the weather can vary. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The 95th Academy Awards was full of emotion and excitement. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once swept the major prizes, earning Best Picture and 6 other awards. Stephanie Elam has the highlights.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
The Best Picture winner, living up to its name. Everything was everywhere at the Oscars. Never give up. Michelle Yeoh winning Best Actress, making history as the first woman of Asian descent to win.
For all the little boys and girls who look like me watching tonight, this is a beacon of hope.
Her co-star, Kiwi Kwan, won Best Supporting Actor.
Mom, I just won an Oscar.
Nearly 4 decades after becoming a child star in Indiana Jones, played, of course, by Harrison Ford. The two with an emotional embrace on the Oscar stage.
My journey started on a boat. I spent a year in a refugee camp. And somehow, I ended up here on Hollywood's biggest stage.
Races that were too close to call before the show included Best Actor.
Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser winning Best Actor for The Whale after trading wins all award season with Elvis's Austin Butler. For Fraser, it's a return to Hollywood's A-list.
There was a facility that I didn't appreciate at the time until it stopped. And I just want to say thank you for this acknowledgement.
Jamie Lee Curtis!
Jamie Lee Curtis edged out Angela Bassett for Best Supporting Actress. The one-time Scream Queen who got her start in the horror film Halloween thanked those genre fans for their decades of support.
The thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, we just won an Oscar together!
CNN Films' Navalny won Best Documentary Feature.
I would like to dedicate this award to Navalny, to all political prisoners around the world.
The wife of Russian oppositionist Alexei Navalny speaking directly to her imprisoned husband.
Alexei, I am dreaming the day when you will be free and our country will be free. Stay strong, my love.
Last year's Will Smith slap was not ignored by host Jimmy Kimmel.
If anyone in this theater commits an act of violence at any point during the show, you will be awarded the Oscar for Best Actor.
Kimmel joked, but the Academy did have a crisis team in place, a result of last year's slow response to the slap.
If anything unpredictable or violent happens during the ceremony, just do what you did last year. Nothing.
So what do you do once you finish building a Viking ship by hand? You take it out to sea, of course. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wen was there for the ship's maiden voyage.
Hip, hip.
Hurrah! Hurrah! With lots of fanfare, a Viking horde, a small gathering, and a blessing from the gods.
Put in place, I hear it. Can you hear well?
Tom Kottmeyer's years-long passion project finally took to the sea, or in this case, San Diego's Mission Bay on Sunday.
Why did I build this ship in the first place? Well, I'll be brief, but 20 years ago, I was living in Vancouver, BC, and I've been a lifelong sailor. I've always sailed, and I heard about a group of Scandinavians at the Scandinavian Community Center who were building a Viking ship. So I said, what? I got to find out about this. So I got involved.
When he retired in 2018, he wanted to build a ship of his own. The plans for the 33-foot Schlipner was based on the ship he helped build in Vancouver, which was a replica of the Gotstad, a Viking ship unearthed from an ancient burial mound. But before the ship could take to water, there was some last-minute fixes to make her seaworthy.
We're a little nervous. It's the first time.
Ivar Schoenmeyer is Kottmeyer's partner in crime. He helped with the shipbuilding.
We want to make sure that we get a feel. We have never used the rudder. We want to make sure that we know how the ship behaves and become comfortable with that.
And with a push, Viking reenactors set off on the maiden voyage. They all had to sign a waiver for swearing any pillaging on this trip. After 3 years and countless of hours of building, the Viking ship Slipner finally took to the sea, and Tom Kottmeyer says it's everything he hoped it would be.
It just feels like, hello, is this real? I mean, am I really standing on my ship? Yep.
Jeremiah Volk was one of the people on the maiden voyage. He says it was an experience to connect him with his Viking roots.
It's just really cool to kind of like recreate some history and also feel a connection to it and try and understand what it was like for people, you know, back before. Well,
Up next for Kottmeyer, sailing the ship in Sweden. But that's
next year. Okay. 24.
In Mission Bay, Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
And here's another look at our top story. Tonight, President Biden is attending a Democratic National Committee reception in Rancho Santa Fe. The president arrived in San Diego earlier today along with the British and Australian prime ministers. He announced that Australia is getting 5 nuclear-powered submarines from the United States. It's part of a 3-way defense partnership.
5th seed Aztecs of San Diego State. Aztecs won the Mountain West regular season title for the 3rd time in the last 4 seasons.
And San Diego State is headed for March Madness for the 2nd consecutive season. The team earned a 5th seed in the South region of the NCAA's men's basketball tournament. They will face 12th-seeded College of Charleston in the first round on Thursday in Orlando. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.